Cool.
It's been a minute since you and I had some time together. And we are live on TikTok and Instagram. And I guess, and YouTube, I think. We'll see how that goes. Yep, we are live on YouTube as well. Okay, so here's my question. Have you ever lived in sin?
Oh my God, I'm living in sin right now.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So for people who did not grow up in super conservative Christianity, what does that mean?
Ooh, it's probably doing anything that I believe Galatians 5 talks about. These people won't.
Oh, hold up. Galatians 5. Do we need to break out
Yeah,
the NIV?
we do.
the inaccurate, let's see.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And I'm showing my, oh look. Oh man. If I was at a Southern Baptist church, I would have just won the sword drill. Okay. Go
Yes,
ahead.
you
Galatians
would have.
5. We
Hold
broke out
on.
the NIV. Now, just for everybody, the NIV is not a very accurate translation. There's lots of bias here. If you want the good one, it's the NRSVUE. But so what is, can you find it?
I found it
Oh my
already.
God.
Because I would meditate on these verses. Like, I'll never be one of these people. So I'm going to read just the part where it talks about these people don't inherit the kingdom of God.
Okay,
So,
don't inherit. Wait, and by don't inherit the kingdom of God, we were taught that meant these people are going to hell. They don't
Yes.
get to go to heaven.
Exactly.
Because it's a dichotomy.
Yes.
Heaven or hell.
That's it.
And if you don't inherit heaven, that means you are in the afterlife going to hell.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we've defined all the terms.
Yes, so this section is titled Life by the Spirit. So starting at verse 19, it says, "The acts of the sinful nature are obvious: sexual morality, impurity, and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God."
Oof.
So,
Okay, so there's so much to unpack there, but just like quick fun fact, if you're ever on Jeopardy,
Yeah.
you probably know this, but like those little subtitles, what did you say this one was?
Life by the Spirit.
Life by the Spirit. Those are not in the Bible.
Yeah,
Those,
yeah.
just people made up. And it's arbitrarily broken up, like to give
Yeah.
a subtitle. Anyway, so back to living in sin.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't hear anything in there that it said living in sin, but what is living in sin?
Well, to me, at least the way I'd interpret this is if you're doing any one of these things. So sexual morality. So that would be maybe having a healthy sex life before marriage.
Okay, right.
Right? Or impurity.
Okay.
Right?
So when people said living in sin, in my world, it meant cohabitation.
Yeah.
Right?
So, yes.
And so like if the I remember this. So I was just like on the outside. I don't know if it was my mom, but I was with somebody who was talking to an older like grandmother type of person, and they were asking about their grandchild, and they said, "Oh, because their grandchild was older, a young adult." They're like, "Oh, have they met anybody?" And she said, "Yes, but they're living in sin, and I'm trying to get them to stop."
Yeah.
Which everybody knew the living in sin was like they're living together.
Right? No, yeah. It means the same thing. Living in sin is like you are living with someone before you got married.
Right.
Yeah.
Which never happens.
Right.
Which is funny. So I think it's an interesting, that whole idea that like everybody, you and I live in North America in the United States.
Right.
And in this culture, the way that you meet people and the way that you decide who you're going to kind of commit your life to or whatever, it generally starts with like dating and hanging out. And then normally, I think in most of the culture, there is some sort of physical intimacy, generally some kind of sex, and then there is moving in together, especially as you get as you get older and you can move in together. And then there's some sort of more formal commitment, whether that's marriage or just a like, hey, we've decided that we're going to be together. We're going to be our primary partner or whatever like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I would say that's how modern dating would work.
Right.
Yeah.
Because all of that is sort of culturally defined.
Right.
Right. And so tell me about when you were growing up.
Yeah.
Like how was that that whole method, specifically the cohabitation part? Like, because just to be clear, we're doing a series about cohabitation, about purity culture. So this is sort of the second episode in that series, and we're talking specifically about cohabitation and guilt and shame around enjoying sex. But so tell me about cohabitation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being like, I'm never going to cohabitate because that's like, you can't do that,
right?
You
yeah,
know?
Yeah, yeah.
And like the whole reason why I guess, Christians or, Christianity says not to cohabitate is because that opens the door for you to then have premarital sex,
right?
Fornication with your partner.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to...
Well, it wasn't with your partner.
Or with
someone.
someone.
Your boyfriend. Or girlfriend.
Right.
And that was the person that was the opposite gender as you.
Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
your boyfriend or girlfriend. So I say partner I prefer this term.
We say the word partner because we're evolved human beings
right.
living in the modern world. But where we grew up, it was
boyfriend
or girlfriend.
My bad. Boyfriend, girlfriend, yes. That's, to be very clear, it is true. And so I just remember like this was a big no-no.
Yeah.
And, just as a memory, when I was in college, I was part of Campus Crusades for Christ. It's called Crew. They're a very popular campus ministry.
Yeah.
And in this ministry,
Campus Crusade for Christ hardcore.
Yeah, they are hardcore.
Yeah.
And I was part of their Bible study. After you are part of a Bible study, they ask you to lead one, like in your sophomore year to your senior year. And I remember a bunch of girls and I didn't lead a Bible study because I was a resident advisor and it was just like too much work for me.
Right.
But I remember one of the girls that I knew in the group, she was leading Bible study, but one of the other crew leaders, like who's above her, who was on staff, found out that she was living in sin. Like she was living with her boyfriend and she got asked to step down. Like she couldn't lead Bible study anymore.
How did that happen? Were you on the inside of that?
Well, I think like she might have posted on her story. Like everyone knew she had a boyfriend, and I think it just word got around that she was living like they got an apartment together. And I remember it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe she's living with her boyfriend. Like, and at the time I was like, yeah, she should be asked to step down. She's not living a life that's indicative of like the Bible.
Right. But
I'm like, and I'm thinking about that is crazy. They asked her to stop leading Bible study because she was living with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. But yeah, I remember it was like that big of a deal. Like she got asked to step down,
Right. She got asked to step, which, and I feel like, man, I have lots of feelings about this. I remember this a similar thing happened in my in my world growing up, and we had this is so insane. So we had I had a friend. She was a pastor's kid. Okay. She was, I don't know, 17, something like that. Lived with her father, and was in a relationship with a boy. Let me just be clear. He was beautiful. He had long, beautiful hair, and he could play the guitar and sing like an angel.
Aww.
Right? And he, of course, played worship, right? Which made every woman and many of the guys just fall over themselves, watching him. But they would never say that they were attracted to him, of course.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, like worship leading, it's a concert. Like as much as you do, I mean, like, yes. Anyway, so they dated for like a year, and then something happened that nobody liked to talk about with his family, where he had to move out. And when he moved out, he moved in with her in the parsonage.
In the parsonage?
In the preacher's house. And this was let me just be clear. This preacher, well, actually, he was a little sketchy because he tried to get me into a pyramid scheme when I was like 16.
Not a pyramid
That's
scheme.
another whole story. But this preacher had this boy living in his house with his daughter, and they were dating. And when that happened, well, first off, they didn't tell anybody, and then all of a sudden, people started to like go over to her friends would go over to her house and say, and he would be there, and like I would go over to her house and with a couple of friends, like I was supposed to bring 2 friends with me to a meeting with the pastor where he was going to convince us to sell this product, but really to get other teenagers involved in a pyramid scheme. But if I could bring 2 people, I'd get 10% of what they, right? And then he would also get 5%. Anyway, but when we went there, the boyfriend was at the table too, where he was trying to convince the boyfriend. And I was like, oh, wow, this is early in the morning for you to be here. And the boyfriend was like, yeah, I live in the guest room. And I was like, sir, what?
What did you just say?
And the pastor sort of like glanced at him, and pretty quickly everybody knew, and it was a scandal.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And so like I asked like and it was funny because he was this sort of from another town, would come back and forth a lot because they were dating. They met at a church camp or something like that. And it was one of those like, okay. So he's here all the time now. And so we didn't know him as much, but we knew her. And so everybody's like, are you living in sin? In your dad's house in a parsonage? Like, what is happening? And she's like, oh no, he has his own room. He has all the things. And like, and we were like, oh, well. And then the father got the question from the church, and he was like, no, it's a really strict thing. And it was like passed off as like he's from a troubled home. He had nowhere else to go. And then it was just at some point really clear. They were living in sin.
Yeah, I mean, come on now.
And it was, I don't know. There was this covering up of it that made it feel even worse.
Yeah.
So did you ever have a friend who began to live in sin?
Yeah. I mean, it would happen and then they would hide it. I think the girl that I just mentioned, it was hidden for a while. And then it came out that she was living with her boyfriend, and then she got asked to not lead a Bible study anymore, know? So... yeah, I think there were a couple people that did, and I remember there was like another person who had a boyfriend, and he like wasn't really like a Christian, like kind of was like an agnostic, and they so many people from that Bible study and crew staff was like, break up with him, told her over and over again to break.
This is not okay.
Yeah, and they got married recently, and they're
shout
happy.
out to our previous episode, hashtag unequally yoked.
Right, and they're living their life perfectly fine. It's just crazy how people think they have the authority to come over and be like, you can't do this, but you actually don't know what's best for that person. Whatever. So yes, I know people who have lived in sin. I myself am now one of those people. So
And so tell me about, and if this is too personal, it's okay. But I am sure growing up in that culture, when you and your now partner were sort of moving in that direction, how did you come to a place where you were okay with living in sin?
Yeah. We got together. We, I would say, have a normal sex life. So it's not like I was not engaging in something already, like that would be the reason why we wouldn't want to cohabitate. But I will say, and also, I mentioned the term cohabitation to my partner, like in the very beginning. I'm like, how do you feel about cohabitation? He was like, what do you mean? Like, huh? He's like, oh, you mean living together? Like, he just like, what is this term?
Oh my gosh, right?
Like,
he's like, wait, he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, he's like, he started laughing. He's like, I cannot believe the Christians have come up with a term for living together. I was like, yeah. But I will say, like, I think my partner wanted to live together way before I did, just because I was so like, I can't, like, we can have sex, but we can't live together. Like, we just can't do that because then everyone's going to know that I'm living in sin.
Well, and I think everyone's going to know that I'm having sex with somebody.
Right. That's really, I think, the reason as to why I was so hesitant. And I was like, no, this can't. I mean, I will say not a lot of people, I guess, besides my immediate family knows that I'm living, like, my friends don't know that I'm living with my partner.
You're Christian.
My Christian friends that are still very much in that circle, except for my other friends who are in
except
my
for the ones who listen to this podcast,
right? And
sorry,
listen
guys.
to the podcast. The ones who are my academic friends in my program, they know. You know, no one. Of course, the secular world never has anything to say. It's always the Christians, like, oh, I can't believe you're doing this. You know?
Yeah.
So it took a while. I was like, you know what? And the reason why I think I was more down is because we eventually want to get a house, and house market is crazy right now.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like,
we live in the DC area, like houses.
Yeah.
Not.
And so I'm like, okay, it makes financial sense. We literally spend every night together. Like we weren't since like October from last month, like last year. We had spent every night. Either he's at my place or I'm at your place. I'm like, it feels very foolish that we're paying for two places, and when we spend all the time together anyway.
Yeah. Right.
So I was like, you know what? And plus, we want to save for a house. We thought about how much money we'd save if we lived together. I was like, let's just. And also, I wanted to live with him. Like, to be clear.
Right, yeah.
You know. And so I think finally I was like, okay, this makes the best financial decision for us. We're also have talked about wanting to get married and like move forward in life together.
Right.
It didn't make sense to not, just because I have my own. I was like, I need to get over myself and people's opinions. Like, I just need to do what's best for me. And what financially was best for me was to move in with him.
Yeah. So for those people who are listening to the podcast, we're also live streaming this. And somebody just posted in one of our live streams, and I just want to name this for a second. This is Red Bishop. He said Dave Ramsey, we have not verified this, but Dave Ramsey just fired a pregnant woman for not being married. They said it's because of the act. Right? I mean, it's like, and this is the act, which the act would be having
she had sex.
Having sex. So let's talk about that. Right. So let's talk about like, so you had guilt, you had shame around cohabitation, but it was like, you know, they say that like anger is a secondary emotion. There's something else.
Yeah.
Like, this is like secondary shame.
Yeah.
Right. The shame was from having sex.
Yes.
Right. And so
God,
that is, I feel like one of the like cardinal sins, one of the worst parts of purity culture is that the end result ultimately is that it's trying to give you guilt and shame around sex. And it's not just any sex. It's not just intercourse. It's all sexual feeling, right?
Yes. Oh my God.
We'll get to other sexual feelings in future episodes, but like this.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I feel like unlocked so much for me, because I remember when I was young and I would get turned on, I would be so mad at myself. Like, why do I have why do I have these feelings? Or, you know, I get mad that I would get turned on by stuff and just be like, I would pray to God to take away my sex drive. I'm like, please take away these desires. I can't control them.
Right.
Like, that's awful.
Yeah.
And and the first time that I had sex, I literally bawled my eyes out after. And like the person was like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "This is wrong. I just betrayed God. Like, I'm the worst person ever." It was really hard. It was really hard.
And I remember, so for me, growing up in that culture, we'll talk more specifically about this in a future episode, but like what you were saying, like any sexual anything, arousal or a self-pleasuring, any of that, it was shame and guilt, like deep guilt. I remember now, I mean, you said that, it's like, I remember being at church camp. And I don't know if I was in late middle school or early high school, but there was a woman there who was a camp counselor. So she was in college. She was incredibly attractive. And I was just like, obsessing over her. Maybe obsessing is probably strong, but I was just thinking about her and how attractive she was, and how, because I mean, that's how humans are, right? You see somebody attractive, especially when they're in your space, especially if you're in a heightened emotional state, like you're at a church camp, especially if you are physically exhausted, like you're like all of these things. I was thinking about her a lot, and then she showed up and wearing, very attractive clothing. And I became noticeably aroused, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Right? And it was the worst possible time. It was at dinner.
Oh.
We're all eating, and I'm like looking at her, and I am like, okay, so I have that issue happen, and I am deeply shamed, right? And not like I'm ashamed because somebody might notice. I'm ashamed because I think I am sitting at church camp, and I have become aroused at church camp.
Yeah.
And this is like not just sin. This is like double sin, right? Because I'm at church camp. I'm in some sort of holy place, and I can't control my thoughts. I can't. The verse that I was talking, take every thought captive to Christ.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And so, oh my gosh. Then everybody was done eating, and was leaving, and I couldn't stand up.
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't stand up. I was in very loose-fitting shorts. It was going to not be okay. And everybody was leaving. They're like, Jeremy, are you coming? And I was like picking at my food. I was like, I just want to finish eating, right? And like, I don't know. And eventually, everybody left, including her. And I just was like, what do I do? And I was like, I've got to think about something. And so I was like, oh, let me think about cooking dinner with my grandmother. And so I started thinking about cooking dinner with my grandmother, and we were good.
Oh
right?
my God.
And I went to worship, and I did not look at her. I pretended she wasn't there. But I was so ashamed. That night, they had an altar call. I went to the altar, and I cried and cried. And then when I got back to my dorm room, once everybody was asleep, I started crying again, because I felt like I was somehow broken.
Yeah.
Right? Because the way it's talked about, it's like, easy. You can do this. You cannot experience this, right?
Yeah.
And I was, I don't know, probably 13 or 14 years old. You can't control that, right?
Yeah.
You see somebody, you can get aroused, and like, I'm 13 or 14, like my hormones are off the charts, right?
Yeah.
And I think that part of the guilt comes from like, they're like, just don't do it.
Yes, they make it seem like it's not like part of human, like the experience to get aroused.
Yes.
I mean, that's really sad, and I'm sorry.
Right?
That
No,
that,
you can joke as much as you want.
No,
Go ahead.
I mean, but I've gone through some things very similar, right? Like I was so oppressing myself, praying that God to take away my sexual desires, to take away any arousal. I'd feel guilty every time that I'm like, why do I have these thoughts? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm trying to purify my mind and be like Christ. I mean, I was so oppressed. This is terrible that I'm about to share this, but like I was going to my friend's house that I tutor, and they have a dog. And the dog was licking my hand, and the sensation was just, I'm like, oh my God. I was like, take this dog away from me. Like, it was like, this is awful, but that is so bad. Like, if I was having a normal sex life, not oppressing myself, even with self-pleasing, like I wouldn't be feeling sensitive to a dog licking my hand.
Right.
Like,
yeah. And then, but I think it's like, but even if you were, right, you'd be like, well, that's kind of weird. Right. Instead of like, oh my gosh, am I sinning with a dog?
No, literally. I'm like, please.
And then the other thing that's a problem for me is that you can't talk to people because of the guilt and the shame. Like, you can't go to a friend or whatever and talk out like how this feels or what I am Like, how do you process this, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that it does, so when I was in high school, there were anyway, let's just say in high school. When I was in high school, multiple of my my dating relationships, I didn't have intercourse, but we did other things. And after every time, I felt horrible and guilty and whatever, but I couldn't talk to anybody about it because I was so deeply guilt-ridden and ashamed, and not being able to this is a new thing when you are an adolescent, and like basically you're left to completely fend for yourself, which is not helpful, right?
Yeah. No, it's definitely not. And I feel like this is probably a universal experience because I went through the exact same thing. I liked this guy in college. This was like the first person that I was with. And we would also do other stuff because this person happened to be Hindu, so they're like, we also have to wait till marriage.
Hindu.
I'm like, yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Talk about our last episode, unequally yoked.
Yes.
Okay.
But he was so toxic though. Like it was not a healthy relationship at all. But I just remember like we would kiss. I'd be like, we can't kiss. So then we'd be like, okay, we can't be together. So for 2 weeks we wouldn't do anything. Then we get back together. Then it'd be start touching. I was like, no, you can't touch me. Like it would just be constant. Like we have to break up. Then we get back together. It was just so unhealthy. Like had we been able to explore something in a safe space, like I feel like it could have been healthy. But I'm just like feeling bad every single time it would progress. I'm like, oh my god, I can't. Like the first night he stayed over my dorm, like in my, 'cause you were in the dorms at the time. I had a huge beanbag, a 6 foot long beanbag.
Oh wow.
And the first night he fell asleep on me, I was like, I couldn't move. Jeremy, I was up the whole night. I watched the time go from 12 to 1 to 1:30 to 2 because I'm like this. And it was Saturday night into Sunday. I had to go to church the next day.
Oh, no.
Of course,
In the praise band?
No, I was not leading worship at this time, but I was at the altar crying the whole morning.
Oh, yeah.
Because this guy just stayed. Like I couldn't even sleep because I was so afraid. Like, oh my god,
you cohabitated for one night.
Oh my god, yeah, literally yes. And so I just remember being at that. It was my sophomore year. I was literally crying at church like all the time because of the stuff that was going on with this guy.
Yeah. And you think about college. I think about like there was nothing abnormal.
No.
In that moment in life to that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me about your partner did not grow up in this culture.
No, not at all.
So
yeah.
What was his experience? How is his experience different than you? Have you had that conversation about like, you felt guilty, you did all this stuff, and then what about him? Did he have a more positive experience of all of that?
100%. I'd be like, I would tell him like, I feel guilty about this. He's like, why do you feel guilty? He just really want to inquire about like my experience. They'd be like, I think like sex is part of a normal human lifestyle. Like I think actually sexual intimacy is really important in a relationship. And so when I first told him I'm waiting till marriage, he was like, well, why are you doing that? And then he kind of like asked me my perspective and then shared with him like this is something that's healthy and that he probably's like, I probably can't wait now. So I was like,
but was it an ultimatum?
No, it was not an ultimatum.
Yeah.
He was very patient, and like I think I came around to okay, I'm down to do stuff, and and I feel like I've been able to explore that with him, but but he very much did not like. I'm like, so you've never felt guilty having sex ever? Not. He's like, literally no.
Right.
Literally no.
I can't even imagine.
I don't know how that like. What does that? I don't know how to. I just don't know what that feeling is. Never.
I can't imagine that growing up and throughout an enormous decades of my life, not feeling guilty about that. I
still feel some type of way sometimes.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So, okay, so I'm sorry. I got a phone call that like distracted me for a second. Okay, hang on. I'm going to answer with a text for just a second.
No worries.
Can you go ahead and tell us about the thing that we're going to end our podcast with a thing that we call TikTok videos that piss us off.
Oh, so find my video?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to open my TikTok, and it was literally I can't play it in the mic, can I?
No, but I'll add it.
Okay. So, sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. So this girl, I don't even know what her name is, but she said, basically she's talking about controversial opinions in marriage. And so her number 2 is that consent doesn't exist in marriage. When you're married, your husband, like the two become one and there's no longer consent. And of course, like somebody stitched this video. It was just like, I was about to go to bed, but this girl's coming on here and saying some nonsense.
Right.
And
so your body is not your
own, right? Like you can't, basically what that is saying is that you're allowed, that is saying that rape is okay, right? Because not having non-consensual sex, just to be clear, is rape. At least that's how I view it. Or sexual assault, whatever you want to call it. And so this is terrible because I feel like this is low key the ideologies that's perpetuated in conservative Christianity, I should say. And I know because, you know, like my mom would share with me, like when you're married, like you can't deny your husband sex. That's wrong, you know? And it's just like, like in Ohio, I'm pretty sure marital rape is not illegal. Like, it's allowed. Right. And that's terrible because consent is so important. And I think, you know, having such a healthy partner, like when he was talking to me about, you know, if it's not an enthusiastic yes, like it's not even a turn on for me. I'm like, oh, there's men out there that actually don't want to take advantage of, you know, a woman like that. That was like, I don't know. It was just, it was really healing for me to be with someone who has such healthy views around sex. And so it's just crazy to me that this is someone's view because that to me is like, you're saying rape is okay. And it's not okay. Yeah.
And so I've seen videos like that. I've also seen videos with that same idea that talks about corporal punishment of a wife.
That's
like,
crazy.
And it's the woman that's saying like, my husband spanks me or whatever when I do something wrong. And it's the same idea. My body is not my own, but that my body is not my, oh my gosh, this makes me so angry. My body is not my own. It is a huge underpinning of all of the things in the fundamentalist evangelical culture that produce all of the unhealthy, just scandalous news stories of these people who do what they want. Yeah. And then the church says, well, it's her fault, right? Because when your body is not your own in marriage, that is founded on the idea that that your perception is not your own to have, your agency is not there. And that happens even before marriage, right? And we'll talk about this, but the modesty culture, and what it does is it perpetuates this idea that like there can be the R word happening and there's no problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, I said the R word.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry.
TikTok will take us down, and it's fine.
I'm so sorry. I forgot we were live on
you're really
TikTok.
fine. We will. It's totally fine.
Okay.
You know, and so like I said, for those listening, we also broadcast this live. TV Johnny said, sometimes I wonder how much emotionally this was damaging for many of us.
I think very emotionally damaging. And I don't think this is what's crazy. It's like it is so unhealthy, the messages that are preached around purity culture in the church. Like, why haven't we gotten to the point of like, let's think about the repercussions of this and how this is emotionally damaging? I mean, it's the fact that we're grown adults and still having these conversations. I'm at my therapist being like, I think I have trauma around sex. I can't initiate. Yeah. Like, I feel like I get guilt feelings of it's my fault if I do this, right? Yeah. It's like, this is terrible. Like, had I just been able not like grown up normally, I wouldn't have to have like these guilt feelings. I have to work through all of this stuff, you know? And it is very damaging and it's really sad. And I feel, this is why, honestly, I can't raise my kids in the church. I don't want to cause them the damage that I have received from these messages and whatnot. Like, let them choose religion when they're older if they choose to do that.
We had a podcast interview. And if you go if you go to the Unbelief podcast, look for the woman. There's an interview with a woman that I did who it was like a Hell House situation where she was taken to, Halloween haunted house kind of thing at a church, but she's in the same place. Like she's not raising her kids. Like the church is got to be an option for her kids. She's not going to force them because of all of this. And that's what I want to say is like when churches are declining in membership, right? When people are stopping going, it's your fault. Right?
Yeah.
It is their fault. Like it is the church's fault that nobody or that less and less people want to come because they're doing this kind of BS.
Yeah.
Like, and so what happens if somebody gets older, they're in therapy, they're like, what the hell? I can't raise my kids in church.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 100% their fault, which is one of the things that I like about, this thing that you and I are part of called Not Church.
Yeah.
Because like, yes, you can't go to church anymore. I get that. There's so many of us like that, but they're like, we're spiritual people.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
We want community. We want all the things that we got in church, but we can't deal with the judgment and the trauma.
Yeah.
And Not Church I love it. It's just like that. Like it's, people having honest dialogue about spirituality, but also about politics and purity culture and all of our things that we've brought up. And it's not a group therapy, but like sometimes people like just process there. And then people are really there for each other, holding space, praying, whatever. And it's people of all different religious identities, all in the same place. Nobody's fighting. I just love it so much. If you're interested in that, you can go to patreon.com/skepticpastor, patreon.com/skepticpastor, and it's like $3 a month. And because we're not going to ask you to give a percentage of your income,
right?
That's not in the Bible. And if you can't, if it doesn't work for you, just stop paying. But also, if I know that times get hard, and sometimes $3 a month is like not possible. That's okay. Just you can reach out, and we'll find a way to get you in for free. So, yeah. And if you're listening to the podcast, give us ratings, like all the stars, even like write something that really helps us get discovered, and, share it with a friend, especially friends that went through purity culture. This is a good episode to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you are in our live stream, this has sparked a lot of conversation. If you want to post a question that you would like either me or Gabby or both of us to respond to, you can put it in the chat on Instagram and on TikTok and on YouTube. I will tell you on YouTube, we had somebody tell us to repent and believe the good news. So
thank you.
I mean, done. We're working on that.
Right.
So this person on Instagram says, partner and I have had so much spiritual church trauma that we cannot go to church. We've been leaders and are much older, in our 60s. Yeah. There's
sad.
such a loss.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, do you feel a sense of loss leaving the church? Because you were a praise band person.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel a sense of loss. I feel like there was, this thing that I attributed a lot of my life and purpose to, church every Sunday, being very involved. I mean, I was going to be a missionary. Like, this was my entire life. And it saddens me when people, actually just recently, I had a friend from a church reach out to me and be like, I just wanted to encourage you and say, when you lead worship, it really blesses me and encourages me. And it's like, that's a really sweet message, but I no longer lead worship anymore, you know? And there is a sense of coming together and something that everyone loves and being able to share that with common people. And now I have that with Not Church, and I really do appreciate it, but there is kind of a sense of loss. People that I love, I can't really connect with them in that way anymore.
Yeah.
Like my mom, when she constantly tells me to make sure I don't forsake my relationship with the Lord, it's I know she means it from a good place, but it's just hard for me to talk to her about stuff that I don't know, that it's just, there's a sense of loss.
I get that.
Yeah.
Erin Marie on TikTok said, "Is there like an Al-Anon for partners of people with religious trauma?"
An Al-Anon? What's
like
that?
Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
I love this.
I love this.
I can tell you, I've not heard of that, Aaron, but our not church sometimes feels like that. There
Yeah.
are people, there's like the people who've experienced it, but there's also the people who are on the other side of it and be like, hey, what's going on? Like trying to understand it, but also processing it themselves.
Right.
Oh my gosh,
That's so funny.
that comment is everything. Yeah, our on Instagram. Yeah, they're talking about that same person. They talk about like the loss of the community, like even when it was toxic and brutal. Like that's so true. Like I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that so much because. I don't know. It's almost like an abusive spouse relationship.
Yes.
We're like
Stockholm syndrome.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Stockholm syndrome. We're like, and like they're, we're human. We need support. We
Yeah.
need community.
And I had a lot of that in my community.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Yeah, this Aaron, you said you thought the same thought when brought up in church. Probably see you in not church. Yes, great.
Yes.
We have new people every single day.
Come join us.
Yeah, that'll be super fun. I can't wait to see you in not church. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna look and see if we have any more questions before we say goodbye. But really, I just want to say, like, I'm not a Catholic priest, but I just want to let you know that even though you are living in sin and cohabitating, I am going to absolve you of that.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I mean, the whole point is like, this is why I think Christians also rush to get married, because once you're married, that's it. You're not living in sin anymore.
Oh, yeah. You know, yeah. That's exactly true.
Yeah.
Yes. Many people get, like in my world, like if you made it to 24 and weren't married, what was wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well, and because everybody wanted to have sex and you couldn't.
Yeah.
And if you did, like if you had sex with somebody, then you needed to marry them because like you were only ever supposed to have sex with one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, just to butt in real quick, one of my friends who's very Christian shared with me that she was having sex with her person. And she also, like, they had met maybe in January. And she's like, by literally, I'm not even joking, April, she's like, we're gonna get married. Just because she's like, it's because if we just got married, she was like, then I wouldn't be feeling all this guilt and shame. Like I would just be married and we would be fine.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a question for you. We were just about to end, but this question is really good. How do you justify to a Christian that it's okay to live together without being married? I'll answer it, but after you, because
after me,
right? Yeah, like because you were just talking about like there's some people that are starting to find out and that kind of stuff. What do you say to justify that?
That it's that. Yeah, I would say. Well, honestly, I think it's really healthy to live with someone before you get married. I mean, can you imagine you get married to someone, which probably was a relationship of a very short period of time.
Right.
And then once you guys start living together, all these different things about your person comes out. Like they're actually you're not compatible sexually, or you're not compatible, like they hate cleaning and you're doing all the work. Like when you live with someone, you can see like what if you guys work together, because this is going to be forever, right? Marriage is, I mean, well, you know, I don't even want to say that because, you know, people get divorced and stuff. But at least for me, I would like to stay married to my partner, you know. Right. So it would be nice to see if we work together. And surprise, surprise, we actually do work very well together. So happy. But, you know, my partner had shared that his sister lived with their partner beforehand and turned out he was very abusive. Yeah. Can you imagine had they gotten married and then she's now stuck in a legal bind, which of course you can get out of, but it's better to know this beforehand. Yeah.
So when I had that conversation with people, I tell them, look, like living with somebody is part of the way our culture deals with all of this.
Yeah.
because our culture, there's a sense of a desire for mutuality in the relationship.
Right.
Right. And in the biblical culture, there was not in any way a sense of mutuality in the relationship. Right. That was very hierarchical. And, you know, and so like the idea that like that we're supposed to have a relationship of like shared values and, you know, communication, all that kind of stuff. That's not in the biblical culture, which is partly why there's this, it works for them to like just randomly get married and not really know anybody. That's not how it works here. And when, and I think that's a good thing, right? I think that mutuality in relationship, that's healthy. That produces physical health, psychological health. And so living together, it helps you understand what it's like to be with that person. And my feeling is all the stuff that you said, but it also lets you know, is that person going to work on things?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Because
like if you're just randomly seeing each other and even staying over a lot, things can be a lot less complicated.
Yeah.
And somebody can like act like they're working on stuff, but like it's whatever. But when you're living together and somebody like I don't know, will never clean up after themselves.
Yeah. Right.
You're not going to drop them because they don't clean up after themselves, but you're going to say like, hey, I really want you to clean up after yourself. Hopefully you can have a healthy version of communication and you can see like, do they work on things or do they not? You know, all of the things that are part of a healthy relationship, you get to observe that before you have a bigger commitment.
Yeah.
And the other piece is like, you don't have to have that commitment.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And I also wanted to add something real quick. I also feel like it's low-key woman empowerment.
Yes.
Like, I think for so long, women are just like, okay, once you get married, you have to then just take whatever, you know, I'm talking about a heteronormative instance, right? You have to just take what the husband does. Like, okay, he doesn't clean. I guess I have to clean after himself. But no, if you live together before you get married, women can decide for one. Like now, I feel like there's a movement of women be like, you know what? I don't want to be with it. My standards are higher. I don't want to be with a man who does X, Y, and Z. Again, I'm talking about heteronormative relationships. This is not every relationship.
Right.
But at least for them, they'd be like, you know what? I see this behavior. I asked you to fix it. It doesn't work. I'm leaving. Like they can very much make and I feel like it's really important now with everything going on with women right now. And
Dave in the TikTok Shack says like living together with someone is already an agreed commitment. Isn't that enough? And I think for a lot of people that's enough. And then for a lot of people, they like to. I think that as humans, ritual is important and helpful.
Yeah.
And so the idea of marriage as a ritualized commitment or a ritual that like is an expression of the commitment that you already have can be really helpful for people. It can also be a great way to celebrate your relationship with your friends and your family.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people I feel like would say, yeah, we're going to try this. We're going to have this commitment. And if this commitment works, then we're going to ritualize it.
Yeah.
We're going to formalize it. And also there's, all kinds of benefits to it in regards to like healthcare and rights
taxes
when somebody dies and all that kind of stuff. That's that can be really helpful and important. And RX Self-Care says, people don't get a dowry of cattle anymore.
I know. Oh, gosh.
There's a lot of traditions in the Bible that just don't work in the modern world. And that's why it's really important to not take the Bible and try to take the culture of the Bible and the cultural practices of the Bible and map them onto our modern culture, because it doesn't work. It's a different culture. It would be like going to a place, I don't know, Tibet.
Yeah.
Right? Who has a completely different culture, and take their cultural practices and put them in modern United States of America. Yeah. Right? It's not going to work. We're a different culture.
Yeah. I also feel like, sorry, as a caveat to what something you just said made me think about this, I feel like also Christians believe they have the end say on marriage. They're like, I don't know if this is how it was in your community, but Christians like, no, we're the one. marriage is a God-given thing. Like God decides marriage between a man and a woman, but it's just like, And I remember when I was like, talking to a friend who's still Christian, and I was telling him like I've kind of deconstructed. I was like, but I said I wanted to get married to my partner. He's like, why? Why would you care about marriage if you're like no longer And I'm like, are you serious? Like, well, what do you mean? Why wouldn't I care? I still think it's a great way to say commitment, but I also think you can be committed to someone without like, if someone's like, oh, we're committed partners. Like,
right.
I think what you said is beautiful. Like, it can be a ritual and we can celebrate with family and friends. But I think living with someone, that's enough of a commitment already. But yeah.
And I think what you said, it brought up something in me in that, like, I think one of the fundamental problems in fundamentalist evangelical Christianity is actually a logic fallacy.
Yeah.
The logic fallacy is called false dichotomy.
Right.
Right. That there's like these two, you have to either do this or this. And those are the only two choices. When in reality, life is almost never two choices.
It's great.
If you think through it, you can often find a range of choices and say, these two seem to be the most helpful,
right,
and I'm going to choose one. But there are a range of choices. And that, I think, when he said that about marriage, that like marriage is, like this one thing.
Right.
He's basically saying like, you've got a choice, right? You've got this dualistic choice when commitment in relationship, it's a continuum. And I think that continuum continues after the ritual.
Yeah.
Right. There are times when you feel more committed to that relationship and less because of life and whatever. Like I have had children, and I know that having children gave me a sense of increased commitment to the relationship with the person that was going to be the other parent, or that was the other parent. And so I think like it's important to stop the false dichotomy there. So all right, hey guys, for those of you who are watching live, it's been a really good conversation. We appreciate you being here. Gabby and I have the next thing to do in our lives.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go. This is going to be a podcast. It won't release this Wednesday. So it's going to be in a couple of Wednesdays. Today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday.
So today we released a podcast with a religious trauma therapist. Next Wednesday is going to be the release of our
Unequally Yoked.
Unequally Yoked podcast. And then this one will be the Wednesday after that, this is Cohabitation. And then, just to give you a heads up, we are going to talk about purity pledges, abstinence-only education, masturbation, modesty, virginity, which is like a whole patriarchal issue, and sex before marriage, a little bit in that, even though we talked about that today. All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you, I believe, next week.